Hello, this is episode 311 of the Keto Diet Podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Vogel. I'm a holistic nutritionist, the best-selling author of The Keto Diet, The Keto Diet Cookbook, Keto for Women. Thanks so much for joining us today. We have a good one for sure. I'm joined by Jacqueline Siegel today, and we are chatting about her experience on keto. Now, way long ago, I used to do these episodes at least once a month and I miss them like crazy. So let me know in the comments below if you love hearing from regular people who do keto and are just learning about their bodies and all the different types of lessons that they're learning and strategies that they're trying, the way they see the world, how they're finding doctors, just all this stuff. I loved my conversation with Jacqueline today, and you may know her as Ketosaurus_Jax on Instagram. I will for sure link up to her page down below. A really awesome account. She does keto, she does carnivore. She's just fantastic. So before we get to today's interview, I want to thank our two sponsors for today's show. The first is Elemental Labs. You may know them as Element. They make electrolyte powders that actually taste good. Their flavors are amazing. They don't use any funky fillers, starches, sweetener garbage. My favorite flavor is unflavored because I'm completely boring like that, but you'll probably love many of their other flavors. I just add it into water, drink once a day, super easy, and they come in on the go packet. So I will include a link down below to check those out and get a sweet discount. And last but certainly not least, like ever, is Dry Farm Wines. They make keto safe, sugar-free wines. I'm going to include a link right up here where you guys can grab a bottle for a penny of keto safe wine. Stuff's good. Okay, let's get to today's interview. Hey, Jacqueline, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for coming on the show today. I'm really excited. This is your first podcast and you have such a wonderful, beautiful story that I had to have you on to just share your experience of life with us.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. I'm a little nervous, but
That's totally fine. It's totally fine. You know what? It's funny. I still get nervous every time I press the record. I'm like, okay, don't screw up. Look at the camera. And
yeah.
then I watch the recording. I'm like, I didn't look at the camera once and I still need to work on this.
No, I'm looking at me and you.
It's so true. It's so true. So I'd love for you to share with us a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you live. Yeah, take it away.
Uh, well, my name is Jacqueline. I am. A lot of people are surprised to hear I'm 37 years old. I get 25 a lot, which I'm okay with. I live in Edmonton, Alberta. Um, I have a background in the arts. I did some theater. I have a diploma in theater production. But I've actually been working in third wave or specialty coffee for the last 7 years. And yeah, I love it. I work for a local roaster here in Edmonton. And it's just been a great journey to grow with this small company and work in a really exciting and fun and friendly work environment. Yeah,
That's
that's a little.
amazing. And it's interesting that you mention your age because you sent me your headshots for the episode and I was like, "Whoa, she's so young. I didn't know she was that young." And then I was reading your bio and I'm like, "Whoa. Wait. No, she can't like I thought you were maybe like 22, 24, like you do not look your age at all." And then you're like explaining your whole life story and I'm like there's no way that she can be 24 with all the things that she's experienced in life. So, it's great. You look so much younger than you are.
Born in '83, so
Oh my goodness, you're older than me. That is crazy. That's amazing. So, how did you get what was like your first introduction to food? And like, was there a moment for you where you were like, I need to start caring about what I'm putting in my body? Or just what was that like for you to kind of start to understand nutrition, whether it was when you were vegetarian or kind of when did that start happening?
well, just for a little bit of like backstory about my life and my relationship with food is like a lot of young women. I grew up with a mother who was a chronic dieter who was never happy with her body. And I don't know exactly how that really translated for me, but I ended up being overweight most of my life. I think it probably came from not understanding food. And I think because of what we grew up with thinking was healthy and going to keep us thin, it was actually the opposite, which we've all learned through keto. But yeah, so I was a vegetarian for 19 years, as I told you, and that was strange. It kind of started just out of boredom one day, one summer day before I started high school. I thought, hey, I'm going to be a vegetarian. It would be just a thing because it wasn't as popular back in the 90s to be a vegetarian. It was probably becoming popular, so I kind of just did it. I decided I was a vegetarian, and I'm a very all-in person. I'm very competitive with myself, so it wasn't even a process. I just was one day, and that stuck for 19 years.
That's amazing. Yeah, 19 years, that's a long time to go. And it's interesting that you say you're competitive with yourself. And I wonder, did that continue the vegetarian thing longer than it probably needed to? Or like, how did that factor into everything?
Yeah, I would definitely say that um, I think a lot of people who are vegetarian or who have been vegetarian can identify with that. It kind of becomes part of your identity. It's like your thing. It's like part of how you identify yourself. And so I found even after, I don't know, maybe 15 or 16 years, I was starting to actually have cravings for animal products again. Most notably, I was craving like raw fish, which is funny because I'd never had it before, but there was just something inside of me that was screaming that you're gonna like, you should eat this. If you ever stop being a vegetarian, this is the thing that you're gonna try and you're gonna love it. And it like there was, I don't know why, I can't explain it. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I was vegan for 8 years, and on about the seventh year, every time I drove by KFC, all I wanted was a fatty piece of chicken thigh. Like I just wanted like the fattiest, greasiest chicken thigh. And it was no wonder because I was deficient in protein and fat. And like still there are days where I can't even fathom how I did a zero fat vegan diet for years, like no fat. Like it just how do you go 19 years being a vegetarian?
Well, it's interesting too because it wasn't just vegetarianism, but it was dieting, right? So it was always
Mm.
some form of restriction. It wasn't just restricting from animal foods, but it was restriction in general, and always chasing the scale down and trying to be thinner as if that really meant anything. Which, I mean, it's good to be at a healthier weight, but it's kind of not all of it. It's not the whole equation. It's not the whole story. So, yeah. So, yeah.
Cool. And like, so you realize that restriction, at what point did you realize that this restriction, the chasing the scale down, as you put it, and like kind of seeing your mom? I mean, I have the same exact background, like watching my mom diet forever. I just thought that's what I did. And that's when people were happiest, when I was losing weight, and I was happiest when I was losing weight. And so when was that shift for you where you realized, I can't keep doing this? This is making me crazy and I'm focused on the wrong thing.
Well, as I like about from my bio, I've dealt with mental illness all my life, so anxiety. I mean, pretty much my whole life. I think if I remember correctly, my parents even tried to put me in therapy as young as 7. So I've always kind of struggled with emotional things and mental illness. And towards the end of vegetarian life, I was actually learning about nutrition. I was listening to the was it the Ultimate Health podcast? Is that what it was? You were on it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember you telling me. Yeah, Ultimate Health Podcast.
Yeah, and but I had heard an episode with Dr. Kelly Brogan, and she's a psychiatrist. She's an MD, and she wrote a book called A Mind of Your Own, and uh, it was it was such a door opener for me to be learning about nutrition because I thought that just being a vegetarian was healthy, and I didn't need to do anything else. Just by not eating animal products, I was being healthy, and that's kind of a common narrative that exists still. But I learned that what you eat and what types of foods and like the micronutrients and the macronutrients in your food and certain vitamins and minerals, particularly B12, I learned about, could really affect your mood, your brain function. And that was kind of where a lot of this started. I wasn't keto yet because I didn't know about it yet, but that was the door opener to nutrition. So while I was still a vegetarian, I started digging into nutrition because I was really desperate to fix my brain, to fix my mind.
That's amazing. And like, I can remember the moment for me where I was like, whoa, micronutrients are a thing and this macronutrient is a thing. And it was like, all of a sudden things started clicking into place and you get so hungry to learn about your body. What was that like, given your past and the relationship that you were in and kind of like all of that to start taking care of yourself while in a relationship that wasn't taking care of you? What was that like to kind of start prioritizing your health?
It was tricky. I mean, my now ex-husband was always kind of at a somewhat healthy weight. I guess he was never overweight, so he didn't really understand the struggle I was going through with food and dieting, and he was very much uh on board with medicating whatever needed to be medicated, and I didn't like it. And I had been on antidepressants when I was much younger, in my early 20s, and they didn't feel right, and I jumped off of them as soon as I could, and didn't go back to it. But it was difficult because he didn't quite understand the use of nutrition or what I was doing. And I think he maybe felt a little pressure to try to eat like I was or to have to participate. And I think that really, it just didn't jive with him. So it created a bit of a break in our relationship there, amongst other things. And but when I started finding some healing and finding some strength and feeling healthier and more vibrant and really feeling the bit of change happening through just dietary change, um, I kind of started to see how I was being treated in the relationship. And unfortunately, him being how he is, when he lost that control over me, that's kind of what ended our relationship. So my growth and strength was great for me, bad for him. So um yeah, so that's kind of, it's funny that, yeah, I had mentioned in my bio that um the end of our relationship was kind of like really the beginning of my health.
And what a beautiful statement, and also bold to live in that. I'm sure there was a time where you're like, okay, this is happening and either I can choose to go this route or I can choose to go this route. And it's very brave of you to share that, and I'm so happy that you prioritized your health. And also, you were sharing that you then connected with an old friend from school and got like a beautiful relationship, like a friendship out of all this. That do you still talk with her today? And what was that like to kind of find friendship and another human being to connect with?
Well, yeah, that's a huge part of this part of my life, actually. Uh, my friend Joyce, who is now my best friend, I consider her a sister. When we hang out, we always say "I love you," and we're parting ways. We're family now. So basically, how we reconnected was, so back in around 2000, between 2010 and 2011, we were in school together. So she was in second year theater production, I was a first year, and that's how we kind of met. But I didn't really make close friends with a lot of people in school. I was all about my relationship with my ex. And so we kind of went our separate ways after graduation. We kind of saw each other around a bit. I worked with her, with the guy she was seeing at the time. But when my marriage ended, I wasn't really on social media a lot, but I felt like I needed to let my friends know. And I basically just went on my Instagram account, my personal one, not my keto one that you see, and I just posted a picture of me and my now ex and just wrote "the end," and people got it. And because of that post, she actually felt the strength to share publicly that her relationship had ended as well. So she was engaged. And I think maybe a week after my marriage ended, her engagement ended. And I saw her post about it and reached out to her, and we ended up on the phone together for a couple of hours, just like crying to each other, and we just bonded so much through this horrible experience for both of us. And I mean, jump forward, she's the one who introduced me to keto.
That's amazing that like a lot of people say like social media, this, that, and the other thing, and it's evil and all that stuff. But then you hear stories of people that probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to connect as you have. And the fact that you call her family and that there's that love and sisterhood there, that is just, it's so beautiful. And at what point did she share keto with you? Like, was she doing keto or she was interested in it? Or like, what was that dynamic like where she's like, "You should try keto." What happened there?
Well, she was never, she never said you should try keto. And I love that about her, where she's like, this is the thing that I'm doing. And she told me about it, but it was never like a you should. And and I think that's really important. And I've learned that myself over the years, to not you should keto, because it can really push people back, because it's such a huge mental shift to understand what keto even means. Um, but so she had a significant amount of weight to lose, and had started, I don't know how she discovered it, but she had found keto, and she had lost a bunch of weight, and she was feeling really good. And I was like, what is this crap? Like, you don't even eat rice? Like, what? How do you how do you live? And but I'm curious, and it was something to do with nutrition, so I looked it up. I looked online and started reading about it, and I stumbled across the mental health benefits of keto, and I was sold. I was in. I needed to try it, because at that point, yes, I did want to lose weight. Um, but I was so down and so miserable from my divorce, even though I had been moved out a few months and on my own. um, it was still eating me up. I was still sad all the time. And it got to a point where it felt like it wasn't just part of the grieving process anymore. So I decided to give keto a try, to try to feel better. And it also gave me something to focus on other than my sad life that was happening. Yeah.
Yeah, to kind of refresh things. And I love that you mentioned the should piece. And yes, that's so, so important. And thank you for catching that of just the should. I mean, when you start anything with should, like you should try this or you should try that, it never comes off as a good thing usually. And people get kind of standoffish.
Yeah, I actually learned the should thing from my mom, because her mother used to you should her all the time. And it just made her crazy.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
so you've been eating vegetarian, you're in a pretty dark place. And what was that transition like for you? And you said like you don't even eat rice. Like what is this? Like what was that transition like for you to not eat rice? And how did that feel as you got started on the ketogenic diet?
um it was, 3.5 years ago. It's not super, I don't remember it super clearly. I know that there was anxiety about eating meat. All the, I guess, rumors and stories about people eating meat for the first time after being a vegetarian and having horrible, like, stomach reactions, getting sick, throwing up, cramps, blah blah blah. Like, that was kind of the expectation. So I thought to myself, okay, I'll ease into it. Maybe I'll have a little bit of like I said, I wanted to try raw fish, but that was too far for me. So I went with smoked salmon. So you still get like the raw texture, but it's not quite raw. And I tried it, and I was like, oh hell no, I am in. Like, it was a rush to have meat again for the first time.
Yeah, I know that when I had meat, mine was salmon also, and I was like, I'm gonna take it easy. I'm gonna do fish. I'm gonna take my time. I had one piece of that salmon, and I was like, "Where's the steak?"
Yeah.
Where is the steak? Give me the steak next.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I don't really remember the first week. I know that for the first few weeks my energy was really drained because I was doing the whole transition. I wouldn't call it full keto flu. I wasn't like sick, but I just felt so like out of energy. Like I remember I would be in the shower leaning against the wall, just trying to stay vertical and still going to work. I was definitely not exercising at all because I had no juice in the tank. Um, but I kind of just I kept adding meat. Thankfully, the building that I was working in at the time, there's a butcher that does local grass-fed meat. So I tried ground beef for the first time in almost 20 years. Yeah, it was really interesting bringing it back into my life.
Wow. And like, what is that? So you've been keto for 3 years. How has it changed from what you just described to what you're doing now? Like, fast forward all the way. How has this changed in the 3 years?
Well, I would say when I started keto, I I was closer to the age I look now, and I feel younger now. You know, I feel like I switched. I feel like I'm Benjamin Buttoning. I feel younger and more energetic. I don't remember exactly when it happened, but I remember really noticing at some point, um, like the anxiety and the depression lifting, and the most amazing part of it for me was when I was in my mental illness all those years, up and down from my 20s till now. Um, I kind of always felt like I was outside of my body. My feet weren't on the ground. I kind of just felt like I was observing life and not in life. I wasn't like a part of it. And at some point, and I wish I could remember the exact moment, but I realized that I felt like I was in the world and my feet were on the ground and I was like conscious for the first time. My brain was just
Whoa.
alive finally.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. That's so cool. I remember the first 30 days of keto as somebody who has ADD, um, always feeling like I had like a veil over my head, like I couldn't get to all of my brain. And it was very frustrating, especially as a child. Like I could feel like I could do something, but it just wasn't happening. And it was so frustrating. I used to have complete panic attacks and I'd act out and all the things. And when I went keto those first 30 days, like at around the 30-ish day mark, all of a sudden I didn't have that feeling anymore. And I could access my brain. And this was just like, what? This is what this feels like? I couldn't imagine like for the first time feeling like you're in your body.
Yeah,
Wow.
it was a really cool feeling, and also a little bit frustrating. I found because I felt really sharp and really aware, and then I would go out into public like grocery shopping or the mall, and I felt like I was surrounded by zombies. It was such a weird feeling because I felt like I was like on a different plane of existence than everybody else. It was really an odd feeling, like I was moving at a different speed than everyone in a way.
That is amazing. That is too cool. And like before you mentioned that you had like cravings, on a restricted eating style, eating vegetarian. Now you're kind of going toward carnivore and doing all the carnivore stuff. Do you experience cravings in there or not so much? Or how has your relationship with cravings changed over time?
It's interesting. I'm kind of still working through some of that stuff. Um, Day to day, I eat so boring and I'm so okay with it. I don't really need variety day to day. I can do the ground beef, I can do scrambled eggs. I'm not afraid of flavor. I'm not afraid of trying stuff. I just living by myself and just fueling myself. It's fine. I've played with fasting over the last few years, and I found that like doing it's probably around 72-hour fast, I start getting cravings. And it's usually sugar cravings. So I'm kind of learning right now that like full 3-day fasts, I have to limit those. I'm happy to do OMADs, like a 24-hour or 23-hour, whatever. And those feel really good for me and they don't spark cravings. And I can do really long ones. I've done 7 days and that's good, and I'm like happy to just jump back into normal eating after. But yeah, usually around the 3-day mark of a fast is when the craving monster kind of hits, so I've been reeling it in on those.
Have you ever tried doing a 72-hour fast or longer on like day like 5 or 6 of your cycle?
No, I am not a cycle tracker.
Okay, well, next
But I know
time
you
if
are.
yeah. I'm just curious, like if you end up trying it or not, whatever. But
Yeah,
I know that when our hormones are at our lowest, which is day 1, which is the first day of bleed to day 10, if
yeah.
if after bleed you start a fast, you may find that you're able to like fast longer and you don't have cravings. I'd be so curious if you try it and it does something.
I should try that. And it's funny that you mention periods. And one of the great things about keto, since I've been keto, is I don't have any mood swings. I don't have PMS. I don't even get cramps. I barely even notice that my period's coming. It just sort of it happens. It's there and then it's gone. And then it's almost like nothing. Nothing really changes except the bleeding and then it's over. Yeah.
That's amazing, right? I know I'm still a couple of years away from that, probably because I have so many hormone things I'm still working through. But it's so cool to hear other women that are like, oop, got my period. And all the inconveniences is now you're bleeding and then you're not.
Yeah, yeah, that's been a really cool thing for me. I never really suffered with my period. When I was much younger, I think, junior high age, I had a few of those tear inducing cramps, but it was never an ongoing problem for me. But yeah, since I started keto, it's like no big deal whatsoever. It almost isn't there.
That's awesome. And like, has it changed or adjusted or anything as you move more into like carnivore? I mean, I guess you're doing the same sort of keto macros, you're just focusing on more animal products. Has it changed at all since making that adjustment?
Overall, yeah, not really. I think I ended up kind of shifting into carnivore. Um, I mean, I listened to Dr. Paul Saladino a lot, and he had mentioned that for him it cured his eczema and his asthma, and those are two things that I dealt with um, when I was younger. And so that's kind of what intrigued me about it. But honestly, like carnivore has kind of become like a lot of convenience for me. Um, I live in a very tiny apartment. I only have a mini fridge. I don't have space to be storing a lot of stuff. And I just found I felt great. I felt equally good being carnivore. My stomach feels great being carnivore, and I can limit the amount of food that I buy being carnivore. So yeah, it's health, but it's also convenience for me. It's simple.
Mm. Completely. And like, I think a lot of the questions that I get also as a fellow Canadian, you're in Edmonton, I grew up in Calgary. I understand that like when we hear diet, lifestyle adjustments, we're always like, well, America gets everything and they have all the products and we have nothing. How's it been like for you doing keto, carnivore, and all these things while living in Canada and having access to none of the fun stuff that everybody else gets?
Well, I'm amazed at what they get and the range of flavors available in the US for everything, not just keto things. They get everything. They have about 30 more Zevia flavors than we get. They have 100 different Quest bars.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, in that regard, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't really buy that stuff. I don't really love that stuff. I'll buy Zevia. I prefer it to like a Diet Coke because there's no color in it. It's just stevia and water basically and some flavoring. But the rest of it, yeah, I think it works for some people, and I see a lot of people um, getting healthier or losing weight, and they almost don't even eat real food. They eat a lot of keto stuff and that works for them. Um, I find it's really just expensive, and I would rather have as few ingredients as possible. It takes away a lot of the guessing or wondering, if something doesn't feel right, what do I have to eliminate? And there's 100 ingredients on a package, right? So meat is just meat, eggs are just eggs, and it just keeps things simple for me. And and less thinking and less questioning.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. I think having access to all the flavors and all the options and how much money you're spending on all the things because you can have them
Mhm.
gets really complicated. And I know that I really appreciated, like, you just order. Do you know TK Ranch? Are you familiar with TK Ranch?
No.
Oh my gosh. They have the best meat in Alberta, and
Yeah.
it's this ranch. It's just north of Edmonton, so it must be pretty close. Like, it's north of Edmonton. It's about the 30-minute drive outside of the city. And oh, their meat. Like, I think about it at least once a week. Their ground beef is so fatty and so good that the fat is actually gold. Like, it
Oh.
cooks gold. Like, it's so good, but, like, I would rather spend my money on good quality animal protein that, like, tastes really good than the Quest bar fancy cinnamon roll flavor stuff.
Yeah, I've tasted some of them, and I think you really have to be creative to think that it tastes like you have to have good imagination for you to believe that it really tastes like what the picture on the package is, because to me it doesn't. It tastes chemically to me. It tastes I don't know. I don't think
Yeah,
it's as good as the wrapper looks.
completely, completely. I agree with you. I never thought about that before, but the pictures are always so cute, great. And it's this big cinnamon bun and it has all this dribbly stuff all over it. It looks so good. And you're like, this is not what I'm eating.
Yeah, it's the brick of protein powder.
It's so true. It's so true. So you mentioned like so many things, and the theme that I'm hearing from you is really learning about yourself. Like, you tried fasting and you did this, and what are the sorts of things that you've learned about yourself, and what's that process like to just like, how did you know that it was 72-hour fasting that caused cravings? And like, as somebody who's, you've said, has lived outside of her body for so long, to live inside your body and be inquisitive about your body, what has that process been like?
Well, I guess I've always been curious. I really like to learn. Though I haven't done a lot of school, I always said to myself, if I ever won the lottery, I would just go to school and learn everything. Um, but it's been really interesting, really listening to me and not worrying about the image of vegetarianism, for example, and not worrying about the rules of keto, and just really um, trial and error, and not thinking that because I read something saying that this kind of fasting is the best way to fast and this is why you should do it, that that's necessarily right for me. Just like I think in the interview that you just did with Sam, she even said keto's not for everyone. And while I think it's a great thing to try and it's pretty harmless to try, I don't think it's for everyone. And like I mentioned with the Quest bars and all the treats and stuff, some people can do really well with all of that. Some people can have dairy, some people can't, like you. And I think it's been really fun and really enlightening to really feel the changes and observe the changes. And I think by going keto and especially going carnivore and removing all the variables, you really notice the changes when you try the things again. So that's been really cool for me. Um, I notice that if I have sugar, like if I indulge in a treat, I'll start getting eczema around my eyes, and I'll normally notice like when I go to work out, my asthma starts bugging me again when it can be like pretty chill most of the time. So those are things that I notice, and once in a while you give into the craving and you kind of understand the consequence, but it helps keep me in check and away from those things that are clearly poisoning me and not serving me well.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're like making a choice, and that's what I think I love hearing from you, is like, I know that when I do XYZ, I'm going to experience XYZ. Do I really want that thing? Because I'm going to have to deal with that thing. I think that's, yeah,
Yeah.
that curiosity, the inquisitiveness is so important to just making a choice that fits well with your body, and less of a, like, when you say you were growing up and it was all about restriction and just chasing the scale down, it's like a whole different life you're living now.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we all know you can lose weight with any calorie restriction. You know, you can there's the cookie diet. Have you ever heard of this? There's a cookie diet out there.
I didn't. That's insane.
Yeah, there's I don't know if it's a doctor, but there's actually it's the funniest thing. It looks like something off of Saturday Night Live. It's this professional who has this whole website and sells you cookies, and if you eat this many cookies, you will lose weight.
This is not okay.
But that can be anything, right? Like you don't need a website to tell you that. But for me, it's not just that. And I've had weight loss and I've had some gain, and it's okay because the overarching thing that's been going on is that I feel well and I feel more vital and strong and alive. And I'm, you know, I'm more active than I ever was in my life. I'm more clear than I ever was in my life, and I'm just generally happier than I ever was in my life.
I'm so happy for you. That's just, it's so wonderful to hear your story and hear all the things that you've experienced to get you to this point where you're prioritizing your health, you're making choices, you're getting fired up about nutrition. What has that been like to just get really excited about, like what you said, the micronutrients, the macronutrients, nutrition, and kind of getting more into the sciencey stuff that it sounds like you really like?
Well, yeah, I really like it. It's like it's exciting for me, and it's been really fun to connect with this community. I've made some friends. There are people that I will eventually visit when we can visit again. Um, it's also it's had its downside. You know, I've lost friends through it. You know, a friend of mine who I was very close with, she went through nutrition. She's an acupuncturist. She took nutrition, but had a very different education. I'm sure you understand.
Yep,
So
I had a couple of those friends, had being the word there.
it kind of unfortunately created a rift between us, and it pushed us apart because um, and a lot of people see keto and low carb as being unhealthy because the government says it's unhealthy, because their doctor says it's unhealthy. And um, yeah, it's really hard. It's hard in that respect to be a part of something and doing something where you feel so great and you see so much success, but not being able to communicate that or get people to really understand it. So that's been a downside, but I've kind of learned over time that I have to do it for me, and if anybody wants to learn from me, that's great, but I'll never force it on anyone.
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to, your mom teaching you, like, don't do the shoulds
Yeah.
because I mean, it doesn't work anyways. It doesn't work and it just causes a rift. But I think too, especially since you came from the vegetarian place and I can relate, coming from being vegan, when I told my friends that I was eating pork rind pancakes, like pork rinds ground up with eggs and fried in butter or coconut oil or whatever I was doing at the point,
Yeah.
it was hard for like them mostly to accept that I was doing that.
Well, it's completely opposite to the Canadian Food Guide, or I don't know if I'm sure you saw it. The US one recently got updated, and it's like an attack on keto what they've done in the US, and um, it's hard to kind of look at it objectively and not sound like a conspiracy theorist, you know. um, just seeing, you know, your friends and people like yourself changing their lives for the better through this lifestyle, and then the government is telling everyone, no, you actually need 75% of your daily intake to be carbohydrates, and people actually aren't having enough carbohydrates, and meat causes heart disease and meat causes cancer, but we're seeing the opposite happen firsthand. So
Yeah. It's incredibly frustrating. And that's why episodes like this and you sharing your stuff on your Instagram and just like everything that we're trying to do to kind of change the conversation and highlight, what other options are available. And I think that's the thing. And to bring it back to the very beginning, you said I didn't even know keto was an option. And same with me. I mean, I paid a lot of money for the education that I have. And it's interesting. As soon as I found keto, I was like, did I learn about this in school? Was I like gone that month? Like where in my textbooks did we learn about keto? And so I went back to my textbooks and my notes and everything, and I found the keto section. And the only thing I learned about in nutrition school in my notebook was keto equals bad, don't do it.
Yeah. And that's kind of all that is ever said about it. And there's never any real evidence to back that up. But, my doctor said it, or a politician said it, someone who's an authority figure in health, which is crazy to me. I don't really understand someone dictating your health from the government, when there's 37 million of us in the country, and we all have different bodies and different genetics and different issues that we're dealing with, and the government says this is what everyone should do. It doesn't make sense.
And yeah, you're so right. Getting into more of the epigenetics and understanding, mental health and the requirements of fat and what people need and how that informs their hormone regulation. And, a diabetic is going to need a different diet than a pregnant woman. Like, all these different intricate details that require bio individuality. And I couldn't agree with you more when it comes to the bio individuality of a person based on their health. We all have to eat a little bit differently, and it's phenomenal that you kind of like, I love hearing stories of people that kind of like woke up to the whole thing, was like, wait, I'm responsible for my own body and my own health, and then nobody else is going to do it for me.
Yeah, I had this really funny moment actually. So the only thing right now that I even see a doctor for is because I still use Ventolin when I work out for because I have asthma. That's the only thing I ever talk to a doctor about, and now I can call, get it refilled, and that's it. But I actually, the doctor that I had sort of started to see after I moved to where I am now, I got the phone call, oh, it's time for your annual checkup. And I was like, no, I'm good. Because I feel like, what are we looking for? I feel great. And like, no, I'll come see you if I need to.
Yeah, I think I probably go once a year for my annual checkup, just like for a pap, like that's always been because I had HPV ages ago, and I'm like so sensitive about that I like go. But I agree with you. I think even last time I was in the doctor's, now this is the same doctor I've seen for 7 years, and every time I go in, I have to fight with her about the fact that I refuse to get on a scale because I had an eating disorder and I do not want to know my weight. And it's like, you don't need to know my weight. Look at my body. It's fine enough. It's great. This will not inform anything that you need to tell me. It's okay. I don't need it. But yeah, I totally feel you on that.
Yeah, I can really relate to that. Just going back in time a bit. I had a doctor for a while. I didn't have a doctor of my own in Edmonton, and my ex-husband, his doctor was willing to take me on because we're family, even though it's impossible to find a doctor in Canada.
Yep.
So he was willing to take me on, and there was a time when so I had a car accident about 8 years ago, and I've been left with kind of residual pain in my upper back. And without an x-ray, without physio, without an MRI, without any of it, he decided it was neuropathic and wanted to put me on antidepressants to try to block the pain signal to my back. And I told him absolutely not. Not because at that time I was too worried about taking drugs or I thought it was a wrong diagnosis, but I said I was working on my mental health at the time, and because of past experience with antidepressants, I did not want to go back on them. I didn't like how they made me feel. I felt like they blocked my progress with, being in therapy. And it turned into 3 appointments of him like railing it on me, trying to convince me to take these antidepressants. And I just flat out refused. I got to a point where I said, even if he wrote me the prescription, I would never fill it. And that was the end of seeing that doctor. I would not go back after that. And that was even after he laughed at me for thinking I could manage my asthma better with better nutrition. He said, "Oh no, that's dangerous. You can't do that." So
It's so challenging. Like I know that there are good doctors because I've met them and they're amazing. But in order to understand this conversation, you need to be a Canadian because, like, not only is it impossible to find a doctor, like, it is so hard to find a doctor that is taking patients. And then you have to wait months for your appointment. Sometimes, like, I remember when I was looking for a new doctor, it was 10 months to get a meet and greet, like, not even an actual appointment where I could ask questions and talk to the doctor. It was like a meet and greet. And then 2 months later, the actual physical. Like, it is so incredibly important, I think, for everyone to advocate for their own health. And like, how cool was it that you talked to the doctor and said, like, no, this is my body. And this conversation isn't to say that all doctors are evil, because I've met some amazing doctors. But I think, generally speaking, my experience in Canada has been the same over and over and over and over and over again. Like,
Yeah.
ugh.
I, I mean, I guess I would like to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and that they're only doing what they know.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming because of his age, I think he was in his, you know, maybe his 60s, late 50s. Um, Prescribing was the thing. Like medication was new and exciting when he was in medical school. And so prescribing it was the thing to do. And that was kind of how doctors learned at that time. I'm hoping that things will shift moving forward. I know that it is the responsibility of a doctor to continue to learn. That's why they call it a practice. But a lot of them, I think, just leave medical school with that bubble of knowledge and take that and say, this is how I do medicine.
Mhm, mhm, completely, and I've seen that, and I think that's why it's so important when we do find a doctor. Like, whenever I find a good doctor, I'm like, "This doctor over here, go to them. They're the best. We just need to clone them or something." But I agree with you. I think it takes, and that's why conversations like what you had with your doctor is so important. Whenever I do meet a new doctor, I come equipped with studies and references, and I'm ready to go. And oftentimes, if I go about it the right way and have these conversations with these doctors, sometimes I can get through to them, and they're like, yeah, yeah, I'll leave the paper on my desk, maybe I'll read it. And that's like enough for me to be like, okay. Like, it just takes a bunch of us saying, they pull our labs and all they're willing to test is cholesterol, and all of a sudden our cholesterol's gone down by 60 points, and they're like, what are you doing here? It's like, I'm on a low carb, high fat diet. And they're like, what? You're like, yeah, that's the only thing I've changed. And it takes enough of us just being honest with what we're doing in order to create that change where the doctor hopefully is like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah, and we see it in our community too. Like I just listened to, and I posted about it on my Instagram. Dr. Mark Hyman had an interview with Jay Shetty, and Jay Shetty is not necessarily in the keto world, but so it was really exciting to me to hear Dr. Mark Hyman, who I think historically was more in the vegetarian world, is now more in the low carb world, but is very careful about how he presents it and words it so that he doesn't kind of alienate. And it was really neat to hear that information probably 5 years down the road from when I first learned about Dr. Mark Hyman. This message is being spread to a broader audience now, or Joe Rogan, even his audience is
Yes.
learning about carnivore and low carb, and it's working its way in, it's infiltrating.
Exactly, exactly. Speaking about infiltrating, tell us about your Instagram, what you're sharing on there, how people can connect with you. Yeah, take it away.
So Instagram is like my only real thing right now. I did sign up with an email address if anyone wants to email me, but I really just post my boring carnivore meals. I like to do stories. I do a lot of reposting from other, I guess, keto influencers. And yeah, I just really love connecting with people and making friends and sharing stories and advice and just supporting um, everyone who's starting their keto journey or who's in it. And I'm still learning from people who have been deep into it. So my Instagram is at ketosaurus_jax, spelled Jax. And yeah, say hi.
Yeah. I love it. And I will include the link. If you're watching this on the video, you can find it below in the YouTube description. And if you're listening to this on the audio, I will include it in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Jacqueline. This was just so fun to get to learn about you and to hear your story. And I know we just met, but I'm really proud of all the things that you've experienced and just like like your zeal for just like going after stuff and taking care of yourself. It's really inspiring.
Well, thank you. And I'm so glad that you came across my account and invited me on. And I'm glad that you're my first podcast. I hope I have others.
Yeah, you did a great job. Thanks again for coming on. Jacqueline is one of the most sweetest people I think that I have ever interviewed. She was just so incredibly authentic with her story and honest with what she'd been through. And I just loved today, and I hope that you did too. If you are new to watching the Keto Diet Podcast, be sure to click that button right there. That's where you can find all of my recent and past interviews and audios and a bunch of stuff. It's all there. If you have not subscribed to my channel, you can do so right there. Just click the button and the little bell. And I've put together a little one-stop shop free guide on how to start your ketogenic diet. So if you're new around these parts, you've never done keto, or you're totally confused, you can click up there and grab that guide. And as always, look in that description where you can grab Jacqueline's Instagram, go and follow her, and I will see you next week for another episode of the Keto Diet Podcast. Bye.